Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Nation. That's BBQ Nation. I'm JT. My co host, Hall of Famer Leanne Whippen, is out on special assignment this week. So she's missing out on this show because guess who's back? Yep, Meathead from AmazingRibs.com, a fellow Hall of Famer there. And we're going to be talking about Labor Day, maybe some dishes, some seasonings, some tips, upping your grill game for the holiday. First, we'd like to thank the folks at Painted Hills Natural Beef, beef the way nature intended, and also the Oregon Dungeness Crab Commission from Sea to Plate. If you've never had Dungeness crab from the West Coast, and I'll say Oregon's is better, of course I would, but try some. You know, you can order it online, and you be the judge. But Oregon Dungeness crab is great stuff. Well, like I said, he's back. Our good friend, my good pal, Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. How are you there, man?
Oh, you're breaking my heart talking about Dungeness crab. About 20 years ago, I had some soft shell crab in Florida, and I got my throat started contracting, and
Oh, yeah.
then a couple of weeks later, I had another batch, and I got some welts in my mouth, and I learned right then, and have since defined that I have an allergy to crab, shrimp, lobster, and crawfish. And I mean, I contemplated suicide. If I can't eat crab, I mean, there's not much reason to live. It was a terrible disappointment. But and Dungeness, whenever I hit the West Coast, that was like the first meal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'd love to order some of that. And you wanted to talk about Labor Day. I mean, gosh, some soft shell crabs on the grill. Oh my goodness.
Hmm.
Shrimp on the grill, lobster on the grill.
Oysters, the whole works there.
Oh man. Yeah.
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 It's well, then I won't tell you that I got two TV segments to film next week, and I just ordered 3 pounds of crab. So I won't
Yeah,
tell you
don't
that.
tell me that.
I won't tell you that. Anyway, we've got the big Labor Day coming up. For a lot of people, it marks the end of summer. Kiddies are going back to school. Um,
Here
parents get a
here
breather. So
the kids have already gone back to school where I am.
really,
Um, yeah, they started this week, or some of them started last week. It's just crazy. It used to be for me. I don't know about you. We came back after Labor Day.
right.
I'm in the Chicago suburbs, and they're back in school already. It's crazy.
Yeah, we like you, it was usually like September 5th or 6th, whatever the calendar day
Right
was,
after Labor Day, first
right after
Monday
Labor
after
Day.
Labor Day.
Yeah, and it was a short week because it was always Tuesday through Friday, and
Hmm.
we did kind of look forward to that a bit. But yeah, they've some of them around here in Portland City proper have gone back. Others they kind of stagger them, I think. More will come back this week, next week, and then the week after that, everybody's back. So anyway, I want to talk about some grilling ideas for Labor Day. I was looking around and doing some research and stuff like usual when we do this. There's a lot of great recipes out there, but I want to start again. We always do this when you're on the show, and people love it. We got to give them some basics if they're first time listeners or something. When they're going to hit the grill, and if they're going to, even if they're doing steaks or dogs or brats or chicken, we got to give them a few tips, and then we'll
Hmm.
and then we'll dive into some special stuff.
Well,
So
there's a couple of basic techniques and skills that everybody needs to learn right off the bat. And the first one is you need a digital thermometer.
right,
That you cook with a thermometer, not a clock. You throw a steak on the grill and cook for 4 minutes on one side is a recipe for disaster, because the thickness of the steak determines how long it takes to cook.
right.
And medium rare steak is 130 to 135 degrees in the center, not a penny more, not a penny less. So you need that digital thermometer. Otherwise, you're going to be standing at the head of the table going, I'm kind of got away from me. I'm sorry. And your expensive steaks are going to be overcooked.
Yeah.
But you'll never overcook with a good digital thermometer. And I say digital, there's a bunch of dial thermometers out there on the market. They're not accurate, they're not reliable. The digitals are accurate. They are reliable. You can get a really good instant read that'll give you precise, accurate number in 5 seconds or less. And they're all over in the hardware and grocery stores and online, Amazon. We have on AmazingRibs.com a electrical engineer who tests thermometers and rates them. So if you want to see the highest rated ones, come to AmazingRibs.com and look up the thermometer ratings. I mean, the top of the lines run $100 plus, but you can get a really nice one for $20 or so.
Right.
That's the first thing you need. The second thing you need to do is you need to learn two-zone cooking. Now, a lot of folks still pour the charcoal in or turn the gas burners all the way up on all the burners. And that's a mistake. Cooking is all about temperature control. So you need to be able to control the temperature. What you want to do is you want to have a hot zone and a not hot zone. And that means you turn on one burner or two burners and leave one or two burners off. Or you push all the charcoal to one side. Not two sides, as some manuals show you, but push them all to one side. Now you've got a hot side. And if you cook on that hot side, you're cooking with infrared radiation, and that is really intense energy. And that's what browns a steak. It's what makes chicken skins crispy. But if you cook on the other side, you're cooking with convection airflow because it's not directly over the heat, not directly over the flames or the coals. And so it cooks more gently. It cooks slower. And we got guys, particularly guys, you got to dial it back. You're cooking too hot. You're cooking too fast. You don't want to cook it as fast as you can. I mean, how many times have we gone to picnics where the chicken is black on the outside and raw in the center? Raw chicken's a health hazard. So you want to cook your chicken on the indirect side, away from the flame. Warm it gently until it gets up to about 150 degrees. Then you move it over the direct side and crisp that skin, get it done at about 160 degrees. And now you've got safe and tender and juicy center and crispy exterior. So digital thermometer, two-zone cooking. I mean, there's a lot of other science and techniques on my website and in my book. But if you can learn those two techniques, you're way ahead of the game.
Oh, absolutely. And I would submit that if you're new to the barbecue / grilling / smoking game, whatever you want to call it, whatever method you're using, I would say don't try to show off if this is your first big bash. Just stick with dogs, burgers, something simple. If you're confident you can go out there and cook nice big juicy steaks or ribs or whatever, great. But if you've not done it before, start a little slower. And like Meathead just said, that way you're not standing at the head of the table, kind of with the hangdog face going, I'm sorry, your steak is, either burnt or still mooing out there. So that's my 2 cents worth there.
Along those lines too, don't try to do too much. Even experienced guys, they say, well, let's see, I'm going to do a brisket and I'm going to do a turkey and I'm going to do, just simplify the menu. You're not a Chinese restaurant with 100 recipes on the menu. It's really tricky juggling. Now, if you've got a smoker, then you can do brisket on a smoker or ribs on a smoker. And then if you've got a grill, you can do burgers and brats over there. But juggling all that stuff, especially all your buddies are going to be hanging around with a can of beer and they're going to say, hey, it's time to flip the steaks,
Yeah.
Supervising. And just don't try to show off. Don't try to do more than you can. Keep it simple. Chicken, just cook chicken. You don't have to do chicken, hot dogs, and hamburgers.
Right.
Just cook chicken or just cook hamburgers. You don't need to do 16 different entrees.
Well, and you touched on it a few minutes ago, and I think it's great advice. When somebody told you to do, 6 minutes aside, get that out of your brain. Don't go there when you're thinking. about cooking a steak or a pork chop or whatever. Don't do that. Rely on your thermometer. Like Meathead said, there's some great ones on the market for under $30. It's a nice Labor Day gift to yourself, if you will, to get that out there. But I think it's true because I was, years and years ago, somebody told me that when I was kind of first starting, and I tried it and it was a train wreck. And so, of course, beef wasn't, costing a third mortgage in those days, and we raised it ourselves. But still, I ruined the meat because it not ruined it; it just wasn't done for people. And so,
some people say, well, I don't want to stick a thermometer in there. The juices will all run out. They're not all going to run out. At the most, there's a couple of drops, maybe a quarter or a half a teaspoon comes out. But let's take a filet mignon. Typical filet mignon is 8 ounces. A steak is 75% water. So that's 6 ounces of water. If you lose half a teaspoon, you haven't lost anything at all. It's hardly noticeable. You can stab it with a thermometer a half a dozen times, and it's not going to dry it out. Well, now, if you start cutting it open to look inside, now you can be losing some substantial moisture. And you can't always tell by the color because the color changes when it's exposed to oxygen. And, if you're cooking at night, the light bulb that you're using, incandescent, fluorescent, LEDs, they're different colors, and so they can be misleading. The one and only way to know if your food is ready is with a digital thermometer. On AmazingRibs.com, we have a chart, a table that gives you all the correct times. You can print it out, or I think these are still available on Amazon, but we have a magnetic 8.5 by 11 food thermometer, a food guide that gives you every temperature you would ever need, including sugar balling temperatures for making candy and stuff. But it's pretty easy to remember. And it's not just an issue of getting it to the optimum juiciness and flavor and tenderness. It's also a safety issue. I mean, you don't want to have to drag grandma to the hospital with a tummy ache. So, it's not nice to poison your guests.
That's right. That's right. And I was just laughing at that. I actually have, you sent me a couple of those magnet things, the charts. I have them right over here off my fridge, and I've actually given some out as Christmas presents in the past. Anyway, Meathead and I are going to step away for a minute and do a little business on the air. We will be back here on The Nation in just a minute. Don't go away. Welcome back to BBQ Nation. I'm JT along with Meathead from Amazing Ribs today. Miss Whippen is on assignment. She's taking care of some stuff down in Florida and up in the South Carolina region this week. She's cooking, doing that. So she should be back here in a couple of weeks. Also, some upcoming guests. We've got Amy Mills will be coming up with us here in a couple of weeks. Cool. And next week, Jess Pryles will be on the show. So, cool. Jess is a lot of fun to talk to. We have because every time I see her, I say fair dinkum because I've been to Australia a bunch of times, and she gets
fair dinkum. I know the
fair
expression.
Dinkum is that, yeah. So anyway, we're talking about Labor Day here. One of the things, and I saw you do this on another show. I caught it, and I think it was it's reasonable to bring up on this show when you talk about seasoning. And salt being the main seasoning for most people, it is for me, and I think probably for you on most dishes. But when you're seasoning let's start with steaks. I'm a guy, I'll just tell you what I do, and you already know this about me, but I bring them out, I salt them, I let them sit there for 20 minutes, a half hour, whatever, and then I go put them on the grill. They're already salted, and then I put the pepper or whatever else I'm going to do it on there. What are your thoughts on that pre-seasoning like that? And then we're going to talk about using other seasonings and rubs like yours that right above your right shoulder there on other types of proteins.
We need to put salt in a class all by itself.
Salt is unlike any other herb and spice. Salt is the magic rock. And we've talked about this briefly before, but I'll repeat gently and quickly. Salt is two little atoms, sodium and chloride. And when they get on meat, they get wet and they start to vibrate. They get electrically charged, it's called ionized, and they move towards the center of the meat. When they get there on their way, they alter the shape of proteins. Proteins are very large, complicated, twisted, and mangled molecules. And salt changes their shape somewhat so that they can hold moisture better. So salt improves moisture retention. The other thing salt does is it amplifies flavor without altering it. Garlic alters the flavor, gives it a garlicky taste. Black pepper alters flavor. All your herbs and spices alter the flavor, often for the better, but still, salt does not. Salt just amplifies it and it improves moisture retention. And you don't need a lot. If you're on a restricted salt diet, you don't have to worry. I use only Morton coarse kosher salt, but you can use any salt. All salt is sodium chloride. Even these fancy exotic Hawaiian black salt or Himalayan pink salt, you might be able to taste the difference if you taste them straight, but it's very, very subtle. And there's no way you can taste the difference when you're seasoning a meat or a chicken or something like that. There's just no way. So salt is important, and just use a little tiny bit of it, and it will do the job. My ratio is a half a teaspoon of sodium chloride or salt. Morton's coarse kosher salt per pound of meat, a half a teaspoon. If you're using table salt, it's more concentrated, so you want to go to a quarter of a teaspoon per pound of meat. And you use the salt based on the weight of the meat because it has to be distributed throughout the meat. For example, on a rib slab, if you sprinkle salt on a rib slab, it doesn't have to go very far to get to the center.
Right.
I mean, a rib slab is maybe at most an inch thick, so it can travel to the center a half-inch way in just an hour or so. It'll be at the center. But if you do a pork butt, which is the shoulder muscle, not the rear end, but if you do a pork butt, which is 5 to 7 pounds or more, and it's a big round bowling ball, it takes a long time for the salt to get to the center, hours, overnight is best. But you need more salt because there's a larger mass. So you apply the salt based on the weight. The other thing is your spice rubs. If you buy a spice rub, here's an example, one with my ugly face on it. If you buy a spice rub, chances are there's salt in it already. Almost all of them have salt. And it's usually okay for stuff like chicken and ribs. But if you're doing a big, thick, fat piece of meat like pork butt, you may need to add more salt at the start based on the weight. I have recipes on AmazingRibs.com for rubs that you can make yourself a lot cheaper than buying mine in the store. And they don't have salt in them because I want you to apply the salt and the spices separately, because the black pepper, the sugar, the thyme, the rosemary, the molecules are way too big to penetrate. They may get into the little tiny pores and cracks and crevices on the surface. They may go a 1/16 of an inch or maybe even an 1/8 of an inch down, but they're not getting to the center like salt does. Salt is the magic rock. It gets all the way in. Nothing else does. So you apply the salt based on the weight of the meat, and then the other spices on the surface area. So the more surface area you have, the more rub you need. And you sprinkle it on. Usually a rule of thumb is cover it nicely, but at least be able to see the meat through the rub. Don't cover it so that you can't see the meat.
Right.
And away you go. And I have recipes for everything from fish rubs to pork rubs to beef rubs. All of that's on AmazingRibs.com. And none of them have salt, which is also handy if you are on a restricted salt diet. But I show the math there. there's so little salt in my formula that it's not likely to endanger your daily allotment.
Well, we've got about a minute and a half here, but I want to ask you, what about fat? And I'm not talking about me personally. I'm talking about you get a nice ribeye, or maybe you buy the whole rib and you cut your own steaks, which I
Yeah.
do, you do like that. And I leave a little extra fat on the outside. I happen to like it. Okay. Is that molecular process the same on
Yeah.
fat as it is on the meat tissue?
Yeah, if you like the taste of the fat, then leave it on there. It'll
Right.
cook and
Right.
it'll get tasty. And I like a little bit of it. But fat is oil. Meat is 75% water. Oil and water don't mix.
Right.
So that fat cap, the outside layers of fat, is not getting into the meat. It's not penetrating the meat. It's not enhancing the flavor or in any way improving the taste of the meat. Now, if there is marbling, which is those little streaks of fat within the muscle inside the meat, that's highly desirable because then that melts. That's full of flavor. It mixes in with the juices of the meat, and that you want. But the surface fat, you buy a pork butt. I just bought 2 yesterday for doing some pulled pork. There's a big old fat cap on one side. A brisket, huge fat cap on one side. You
Right.
put your rub on top of that fat cap, and it's not going to touch the muscle. It's not going to touch the meat. So you're not, and the first thing you do when you serve meat with a lot of fat on it is many people will just cut it off, and there goes your rub. So I recommend that you remove as much of the fat cap as possible, maybe leave a quarter or an eighth of an inch because during cooking it will shrink. And people will eat a very thin layer of fat cap, but they won't eat a thick layer of fat cap. And fat does have a lot of flavor, but there's just no way that people all know the statement, fat is flavor. Fat within the meat is flavor. Fat on top of the meat does nothing for you.
No. We're going to take another break. We're going to be back with Meathead from Amazing Ribs here on The Nation. I'm glad you're with us today, and please stay with us. We got a lot more coming your way right after this.
Jeff,
Yes.
Can you use the term amazingribs.com?
Oh, okay. Okay.
When people hear Amazing Ribs, they call me at 10 o'clock at night and ask if we're still open or are we delivering.
Got it.
They think I'm a restaurant. So I'm not a restaurant.
Do you ship FedEx? Okay, here we go.
Right. Yeah. If you say .com, then everybody knows I'm a website.
Okay. Welcome back to The Nation. I'm JT along with Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. I left off the .com last segment. But I always have faith that Meathead will remedy the situation for me there. He does. But I'm a radio guy. We talk fast and think very little. We'd like to thank the folks. We'd like to thank the folks at Painted Hills Natural.
Well, I got to clarify because the reason I had asked you to refer to us as amazingribs.com is when people hear Amazing Ribs, they think I'm a restaurant and they call me up in the middle of the night and ask if we still open and do we deliver. No, we're a website, amazingribs.com.
Yep. Painted Hills, beef the way nature intended. Oregon Dungeness crab. I think it's the best crab in the world, and I've eaten soft shells and I've eaten stuff all over the world, and all of it's pretty good, but it's hard to beat Dungeness crab from the West Coast. I'll do that. So we're talking with Meathead from AmazingRibs.com today, and we're talking about Labor Day stuff coming up and upping your game a little bit for the holiday. What's your favorite thing to cook on Labor Day? I mean, we've always talked over the years, you've got Father's Day, and you've got 4th of July, and you've got Memorial Day, and we've kind of tied things in like 4th of July with ribs and others with burgers and brats and blah, 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 like that. But what's your favorite thing to kind of...
That's an interesting point. I mean, for Thanksgiving, we cook turkey. For 4th of July, I think ribs are required. Father's Day, a steak. Mother's Day, maybe some chicken. I don't have any specific favorite for Labor Day other than my neighbor across the street, who plays a really great banjo. And he and his musician buddies all get together on Labor Day, and we do a big cookout, and everybody brings a dish to pass, and there's maybe 30, 40 people there, and they all bring instruments except me, and I bring the apron, and we fire up the grill, and I just stand there at the grill. He's got two grills, a gas grill and a charcoal grill, and I cook. Maybe I just got done warning people, don't try to do too much, but I'm doing pork chops, flank steak, hamburgers, bratwursts, chicken, all of it. I've got them going on all burners and sweating like a pig usually on a hot day. And the dish that I choose to bring is something I can prepare in advance. And I used to always do a smoked turkey, but it wasn't enough for this crowd. They ran out of it in a hurry. So now I'm doing pulled pork.
There you go.
And so I do, that I can start up the day before or the night before, or overnight cook, or early in the morning and have it ready for a 3 o'clock party. And everybody loves that. So I'm doing pulled pork from pork butts. And I actually must confess, I cooked them yesterday for the Labor Day. I cooked them yesterday. I shredded them. I put them in a vacuum sealed bag. I froze them. And then on Labor Day, with the parties at 3 or 4, I'll put them in a sous vide bath. That is a warm water bath at about 145 or 150, and gently retherm it, is what they call it. Bring them back to temperature, but not too hot. And it'll take a few hours to get them back up to temp. And they'll be tender and juicy and moist as if I just cooked them. No sauce on them yet. I put them in a crock pot and mix in just a wee bit of sauce. And then we serve buns and the sauce on the side.
Sure.
And it's always a hit. It's tender and juicy, and nobody knows I cooked it a week in advance.
No, I'm with you on that. One of the things I like to do for Labor Day is you and I have talked, and Leanne has talked on the show about grilling vegetables and stuff, and it's a great time of year to do that. I also really like to grill fruit, and I like to make little concoctions of fruit, kind of fruit kebabs, if you will. You know, you can take some pineapple, or you can apples or peaches, or it's all coming in ripe now in the fall, these fall fruits, the pitted fruits and stuff like that. And it's great to do that.
I think pineapple on the grill is one of the best things ever on the grill.
It's like candy.
I like it as well as I do a steak on the grill. I mean, pineapple on the grill. Pineapple itself, if it's ripe, is just marvelous. But when you grill it, the sugars caramelize. It gets new flavors. It's warm. It's fantastic. Peaches on the grill. I'm pretty sure my website has a really nice recipe for peaches with a rum brown sugar sauce on top of vanilla ice cream. And also, I noticed in the background, you've got a picture of a grilled sandwich. And I grilled pound cake, and peaches on vanilla ice cream on grilled pound cake, grilled peaches with this rum sauce. Boy, that is ever good.
You can also grill peaches, excuse me, and use one of those little, like if you go to Baskin and Robbins, the little waffle bowls, you can put it in there. You can almost make like a grilled peach cobbler with fresh ice cream on that. Of course, it's very low fat with brown sugar and butter and all that, but all that. But I saw something this morning though that I really thought was interesting. They created, I don't know who did this. I didn't follow it up. I just saw it before we came on the show, but whoever did it made a honey and balsamic fruit glaze on that. And I'm going to mess around with that and see if I like it.
That sounds like a winner.
Yeah. The other thing I like to do is like I said, we're a lot of pitted fruits up here, if you will, and pears. And I like to take pears, cut them in half, skin them, cut them in half, remove the seeds and stuff. And I'll put a little butter, brown sugar, and cinnamon on it. And you can make crumbles on the top too, if you want, but grill that and then serve it with ice cream. So, And it's quick, it's easy, it's not hard to do. You can kind of whatever type of flavorings you want. If you want more brown sugar or less, or more butter or no butter, whatever, you can design it yourself, but it's a very simple thing to do.
Well, you're also, we talking about fruit, but you're also deep into vegetable season.
Mhm.
And I have a really great recipe for eggplant parmesan on the grill. Now, normally, if you do eggplant, you dip it in egg, and then you dip it in breadcrumbs, and then you fry it in a quarter-inch of oil in a frying pan, and it just soaks up all that oil. And that's marvelous. But what I'll do is I'll take the eggplant and cut it either into planks or into cross sections, about a half-inch to three-quarters inch thick. Give it a very light paint of oil, a sprinkle of salt, throw it on the grill until it's gotten a little golden and maybe a couple of grill marks. And then I'll put a big old dollop of thick tomato sauce on top. And usually I make the tomato sauce from fresh tomatoes, which come in around the same time as the eggplant. I take Roma tomatoes, which are more meaty than juicy, cut them in half, grill them on one side, flip them over, grill them on the other side. Once you've done that, the skin pops right off, grind it up, cook it down a little bit in a pot so it's really thick, add some oregano or some thyme and some garlic, and make a good tomato sauce out of it. And then I scoop this tomato sauce on top of the eggplant. And then I take a slice of fresh mozzarella or a sprinkle of Parmigiano Reggiano and put it on top. And you've got yourself a really excellent eggplant Parmesan with a lot less oil than when you do it indoors. And it has all those marvelous flame roasted tomato and grilled flavors.
I love that. I really do love that. It sounds so. But I want to ask you about you making when you're reducing your tomatoes like that. How long do you do that? It's if people don't know what he's talking about, he's grilled them, he's popped the skin off of those, he's mushed them up, if you will. Do you do it by hand? You put them in a food processor to grind them
I just
down, or
throw them in a pan, a saucepan,
yeah,
and maybe mash them up with a potato masher or something. Once they start bubbling and boiling, they break down pretty quickly. A potato masher, it doesn't matter if they got lumps in it.
yeah,
It tastes fine. And you just, kind of crunch it down or use a fork. And it depends on the breed of tomato. Now, if you've got Better Boy and Big Boy tomatoes, which are baseball size, there's a lot of liquid in them. But if you've got Roma or Marzanos, which are kind of egg shaped, there's much less juice in there. There's more meat in there. So
right.
they'll cook down. Now, when we talk about cook down, I think probably your audience has an idea what we're doing. Let's make sure they know what we're talking about. Cooking down means you simmer food until the water boils off, and that thickens and concentrates it. So you take this tomato that you've smashed up, and it's got a lot of water in it. It's very thin. If you put it on a burner in a pan and bring it up to about 190, so it's not boiling, it's simmering instead of here we radio. It will reduce until it's thick, and then you can scoop it, and thick, like you want to get it like ketchup or something. And
Right.
then you can scoop it on top of these eggplant slices and put your cheese on top, and away you go. All kinds of things are good by reduction. You mentioned balsamic. Most of the grocery store balsamic has a lot of sugar in it. And if you take that and pour it into a pan, and again, you don't want it to boil, you want it to be a low simmer. If you cook that until it gets thick like a syrup, it's fantastic. It's a sweet vinegar syrup, which is really great. People put it on strawberries, on ice cream,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really great. You drizzle it on fresh tomatoes. It's fantastic stuff. So cooking down liquids is always a cool technique.
Uh, it's also very good on Brussels sprouts.
Oh
I would.
yeah. Oh boy, absolutely. Brussels sprouts with reduced balsamic.
Oh yeah, yeah. It'll make you smile. I guarantee it. We're gonna take one more break in the show, and then Meathead and I will be back on the Nation to bring you more food information, especially about outdoor barbecue, grilling, and smoking. And I'm talking about smoking the proteins, not smoking something else. Anyway, we'll be right back.
Yeah, we're in Illinois where the other kind of smoking is legal.
Yeah. Remember, I'm in Oregon. We led the way. So
That's right.
here we go. Welcome back to the Nation. That's Barbecue Nation. I'm JT. Miss Whippen is on the road this week, but we've got Meathead from AmazingRibs.com, and we've been talking about Labor Day, upping your game a little bit for the Labor Day. And we touched on some seasoning and some favorite dishes that he likes to do. I like to do whatever you like to do at home. It's one thing I wanted to emphasize in this show, what Meathead and I talk about and what our other guests talk about, these are tried and true things that we've done. You're the master of your own grill or smoker at home. So take these as emphatically praising suggestions. And if you want to burn your steak to 215 degrees, don't call us, but it's your choice. So anyway, there you go.
Well, I mean, no, taste is still a matter of taste. And
Absolutely.
there are good techniques. There are techniques that work better than others. I go on social media when people talk about their favorite recipes. I will offer suggestions on how to improve it, but do it your way. I mean,
Yeah.
if you like it your way, don't let anybody intimidate you into doing it another way, even if I tell you it's wrong.
Yeah. Well, Meathead, I'll tell you, I grew up, and when I grew up, my dad was a quote unquote meat and potatoes guy. He was part of the greatest generation and all that stuff. He liked his steaks pan fried. That's how we grew up. Cast iron skillet, steak in the skillet. When I really started getting into cooking, I don't know, I was 12, 13, 14. I started to broil the steaks, and he wouldn't eat them. Now, they were medium rare to the best of my ability. We didn't have the good thermometers and stuff back in the Pleistocene era. But what I'm saying is I tried to make it grilled because I was watching people on television, um, picking up stuff, reading books, whatever. But my dad wouldn't do it. He didn't like a medium rare. He didn't want that piece of meat still bleeding and mooing, like that. And it wasn't. But I would always end up, just if I was doing a grilling something or broiling something, I'd have to set it way down low, the rack way down low, and just make his really brown in the middle, and then he would eat it. So
Well, there's an awful lot of people who prefer their steaks well done.
yeah,
And well done is about 155, and it's gray or brown in the center. And the reason I think that most of them want it that way is they think all that pink juice is blood,
right.
but it's not. It's not blood. It's water. Remember, steak is 75% water. It's water that is tinted slightly pink by a protein in the meat called myoglobin, and scientists call it myo water. But if you think about it, animal blood, beef blood, chicken blood, lamb blood, and human blood is pretty much the same. It's all very, very dark red, almost black. If you cut yourself and you look at the blood coming out, it's really dark red, it's black, and it's thick. And it coagulates rapidly in the air. And this stuff that comes out of your steak is thin. It's pink, not red or black. It's runny. It doesn't get thick. It just sits there in the bottom of the plate. And that's because it's water. And so the pink juices that come out of a steak are not blood. And every time you call it blood, somewhere in Indiana, a teenager becomes a vegan. So we need to stop. Anybody want blood on their steak? It's not blood. Don't say that. It's juice. Just said you want juice on your steak. Fine. It'll moisten the meat. It's great. But I think if we can overcome the fear that we're eating blood, and even so, if you cook it to well done, what happens to all that so-called blood? It doesn't. Is it absorbed by the meat? Does it evaporate? Well, I mean, it's still that juice is still gone.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I'm a heathen. We've talked about this on the show, I think, a couple of times, but pull the steaks off the grill, you put them on a platter, you bring them in the house, they're dishing their food like this. I'm always the last guy to make my plate, if you will, because I'll take that blood off the steak plate and I pour it on my baked potato because I love it. It's it's very seasoned, it's very tasty, it's like that. And I put some of that on my baked potato. Now, some people have questioned my parentage on that deal, but I'll tell you, it's very, very tasty. And it's not blood. I still to this day, with all the people I invite and cook for, and I will still have people say, I don't like all that bloody red stuff on the plate. It's not, but
Well, we
that's
also
what
know the scientists. There is a branch of the sciences called food science, and food scientists, particularly meat scientists, are deeply involved in research on food and meat, and they have equipment. For example, they have a gadget called the Warner Bratzler machine. The Warner Bratzler machine is essentially a metal tooth. It's an artificial tooth. And they put a piece of meat under it, and then they can apply pressure to that tooth, and they can measure precisely how much pressure it takes to cut into the steak. And that's how they measure tenderness. They also can measure juiciness. And we know that tenderness and juiciness is optimal on a steak in the 130 to 135 range, which happens to be medium rare. So if you're going to take it well done, you're taking it up to 155. It is by definition tougher and less juicy.
Yep. Well, you cooked all the good stuff out of it at the end there. That's what I think. Anyway, you said earlier you made some pulled pork for your Labor Day bash. What else? We got a couple minutes here, and we'll pick it. We're going to do a short after hours today, not our usual marathon. But what are you going to serve with that?
Well, I'm just bringing the pulled pork to this big old party with 40 people. And there's one guy who makes a great coleslaw. I mean, we've been doing this now for like 20
Yeah.
years. And everybody has sort of settled upon the crowd favorite. And there's a little of everything. There's salads, there's coleslaw, there's potato salad, there's cornbread, it's a huge spread. There's 30 or 40 people, so everybody brings something. Oh, and the pies. There happen to be some really good pie bakers in this crowd, my wife included. And Jeff, the host of the party, is a great pie baker, and his girlfriend is a pie baker. So there's just, boy, you got to save room for pie. And it's just a lot of fun. And the music, I mean, they all bring folding chairs and they sit in a circle. If you can imagine 30 or 40 musicians sitting in a circle, and they play a lot of folk music and country and hillbilly music, and there's some old-fashioned string instruments. It's just a hullabaloo. It's a lot of fun, and so I just bring the pulled pork, and then I stand at the grill for about an hour and a half, cooking up all the meats, and then we ring the dinner bell, and we all sit down and eat.
I'm going to send you a pair of spoons.
Of what?
Spoons that you can play. Spoons.
Oh, I play the radio. That's my musical talent.
Yeah, that's your musical instrument.
People ask, I get interviewed a lot, and people ask if I have any regrets, and that's my biggest regret, is that I gave up on both piano and violin lessons as a kid. I hated them. I preferred sports. I played a lot of sports. I loved my sports careers, but I wish I could play a musical instrument so I could join these gangs.
You can hum.
Yeah.
Get a kazoo.
I just sit on the outskirts and enjoy it. There's some great musicians and some great voices.
There you go. That's going to wrap it for what's this show again? Oh yeah, BBQ Nation this week. Don't forget Meathead at AmazingRibs.com. Go there. If you're really want to get on your game, sign up for the Pitmasters Club. There's lots of
Yeah, thank
stuff
you for saying that.
in the Pitmasters Club there. But there's a lot of free information, like 72,000 pages of free information, and then there's another 72,000 pages in the Pitmasters Club, and some of the interviews from this show and another show is in there too, so you can hear all kinds of good stuff at Meathead. Thank you, I appreciate it as always.
Always good to talk to you.
He and I are going to slip away and do some after hour stuff. Because both in Illinois and in Oregon, certain things are legal. But until that time, go out, have a good Labor Day party, good time. And remember our motto here, turn it, don't burn it. So for Miss Whippen, Mr. Meathead, and myself, take care, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to After Hours here on BBQ Nation. I'm JT this week with Meathead, my buddy Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. See, I got the .com in there.
Thank you.
Now.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I conjured up a couple of quick questions for you because, like,
oh God, another one of your damn quizzes.
Yeah, sort of. You said it yourself a couple 3 years ago on this show. You said a good interviewer will always know the answer before he asks the question, right? And that's true for the most part. And I tried to do that. But these things I would not know. So here you go. Do you remember or have a favorite recipe or dish that as a kid growing up that that mom or dad fixed and you loved?
Yeah, and that's how I really came to barbecue. There were two of them. About once a month, mom and dad would take us out, my sister and me, out to dinner, and we had a couple of favorite haunts, but my favorite was the Chinese restaurant, the Golden Dragon, and the Golden Dragon did Chinese ribs, and I fell in love with ribs, pork on a stick with it was a char siu hoisin flavored sauce with sesame seeds and maybe some chopped scallions, and I just fell in love with them, and that's what prompted my love of ribs. And I later, when I was in college, I went to the University of Florida, which is in Gainesville, not in Miami, Miami is a suburb of New York. Gainesville is still part of the Deep South. Gainesville is still horse country and farm country and rural. And there I met Y.T. Parker, this marvelous old black man who had a barbecue joint. And the white kids didn't go into that neighborhood. And I went into that neighborhood because I fell in love with his ribs. And he'd let me hang out at the pit at back, and the pit was just concrete blocks, and he and two or three of his buddies, and his buddies were usually drunk, were all sitting around out there grilling or smoking ribs. And man, I just fell in love with barbecue that way. And the other thing when I was a kid is one of the other restaurants we'd go to would be a pizza joint, and I fell in love with pizza. And fortunately, I married an Italian American who makes great pizza, and I've learned how to make pizza since. And then one more, my dad would go out back, and he had, I don't think it was a Weber kettle, but it was a knockoff, and he would do flank steak, and occasionally he'd do beef ribs, but he would grill them. He wouldn't low and slow them.
Right.
And I just loved the flank steak, and he'd let me hang out with him at the grill, maybe 10 years old. And occasionally, I think he'd let me have a sip of beer, and that might have cemented my relationship with grilling. And those were the flavors of my youth that really caught on. And years later, Dad was a food technology major at New York University. And he learned food technology. So it runs in my blood, the sciencey stuff. And Years later, he opened a butcher shop, and then years later, he opened a restaurant. So I've been, hanging around with food all my life.
I wonder how many golden dragons, golden pagodas,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
restaurants there
yeah.
are around the country like that.
Oh God, that's worth Googling. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
probably thousands of them. Yeah.
I know we've got some within a 9 iron distance from here that where I live, and that's it.
I
Okay.
still love Chinese food. Chicago, where I live, has a major size Chinatown, and
Yes.
I think I've eaten in most of the restaurants, and there's some great food down there.
I little secret, it's not really a secret for anybody that knows me, as much as we do barbecue and as much as I've done, the cowboy cook and all the different things over the years and cooked all these things, Chinese food is my go-to, especially when I'm all by myself. My greatest fun thing in the world, Meathead, is to go to my favorite Chinese restaurant, which is about 20 miles north of us. And back in the days when we actually had newspapers, real newspapers that had content in them, I would get two newspapers, go sit in the bar. It was a well-lit bar, and have my lunch at the Chinese restaurant and read the newspapers. And that was like heaven to me. Oops, sorry to
Mm-hmm.
whack my mic, but that and we don't really have newspapers per se anymore that are. I don't know how it is in Chicago with the Trib and stuff if it's still big, but out here the Oregonians like you
Yeah,
line
the
your bird
Oregonian
cage.
was a classic. No, I wrote for the Trib for 3 years,
Yeah,
a column about wine, and it's just a shadow of itself. The Sun Times has actually gotten to be pretty good, but uh, if you like Chinese food,
love it.
in my new book, which I'm putting the finishing touches on, has a really great technique for cooking it at home. One of the problems with cooking Chinese food is that it really depends heavily on the use of a wok.
Right.
And there are some features to this bowl that make it an especially good cooking device. And part of it is that the bottom of the bowl is right over the flame and it gets real hot. But if you push the food up the sides, it's not as hot and it cools, so you can control temperature that way. But your indoor oven rarely gets hot enough, and it really needs to be hot, because if you take, say, slices of chicken or beef and put some oil in a wok and throw them in there and try to what's called stir fry them,
Right.
the first thing that happens is the water bursts out, and now you're steaming or or boiling the meat, and you're not frying it, and you don't get the same textures and flavors. So to get the right textures and flavors, you need really, really high heat. And you know how you get that? With a charcoal chimney. I do my Chinese cooking outdoors on my Weber kettle. I take my charcoal chimney. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with them, a charcoal chimney looks like a big oversized coffee can, and you put charcoal in it, and you light the charcoal, and that's how you start the charcoal for cooking on a charcoal grill. But it also confines the charcoal into maybe a 6-inch diameter. And if you fill that halfway, it's 5 or 6 layers of charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
It's hot. The top of that charcoal chimney is well over 1,000 degrees. That is Chinese restaurant temperature. So I'll take my wok, I'll start up the charcoal chimney, get it hot, and put my wok on top of the charcoal chimney. And all this I set on top of the Weber kettle because I want
Right.
the ashes to be collected. It's just a holder. And I'll do my stir fry outdoors, and I can do some really good stuff. I can even do tofu on this thing. It's really a great way, and I go into great detail in my new book coming out this spring on how to do this.
Um, don't worry, we'll be talking about your book, maybe not in this show, but in upcoming shows. Okay. Um, Something that you made for Lou, and she gave you a thumbs up on it that absolutely knocked her socks off. Lou's Meathead's wife.
she likes a lot of what I cook, but we're both really critical.
No
She did a really
shit.
nice dish last night, and it was really excellent. And about a half hour later, it dawned on me because I was looking at some recipes. She used spaghetti in the dish. It was a chicken stir fry, but it dawned on me that a wider noodle would have been better. And so I told her, and you're right, you know. So
Yeah.
we're constantly critiquing each other, and I need this because I develop recipes. I need somebody to say, try this or do that. Um, I think she likes. I think her all time favorite are my ribs. She loves the pulled pork. She's a big fan of brisket. She loves your classic barbecue cannon. But you know, I do pastrami that's killer. The recipe is on AmazingRibs.com. I think she generally likes most, but I make a lot of mistakes. I'm always experimenting, and I have probably a 50-50 record, 50% success and 50% failure.
Right.
And so we have a big stack of order out menus sitting in the drawer because because if I'm trying something, what's something I just recently tried that failed miserably? I can't think right off the top of my head, but I constantly failing. I'm constantly trying something, and we sit down and we look at each other and say, "Get the Chinese restaurant menu."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know when I'm doing something for Shelly and I'll be sitting there and I watch her and I go, "How is everything?" I'm not fishing for a compliment. I want an answer,
Mhm, mhm,
And she goes, "Oh, it's good." And then, but when you take the plate away and you see what's left on the plate and
mhm,
all the vegetables and the fruit and the potatoes, they're all gone, but the actual main course is lightly picked over. Then I know I either have some work to do or it's
mhm.
just not going to come back
Mhm.
in the
Yeah, I
deal.
gotta tell you, she's the better cook in this house, and I'm not saying that to butter her up because she's not listening. She cooks, I would say 75% or more of the meals, and, it's usually improvisation. She'd do great on these, TV shows where you open the box and there's a bunch of
Yep.
weird ingredients in there. She'd do great because she can just open the fridge and grab some leftovers here, some fresh stuff to here, walks out to the garden, grabs some vegetables, and then she whoops up a great meal. She's constantly doing that. Last night was a good example. We went to theater the other day, and after theater, we went to a restaurant, and I had half a chicken, and I couldn't finish it. So we brought home the chicken breast that was left over. Last
Sure.
night, she chopped it up and she mixed up a cream sauce, and there was some peas and some spaghetti and some other stuff, and it was just delicious.
Oh yeah. Maybe a linguine noodle on that.
Yeah, I wanted a fat noodle. I
A
wanted
fat
a stroganoff type noodle.
stroganoff type. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, which actually leads me to my last question. It's kind of a new question in the after hours. What do you, what would you change, if anything, about food shows on television? And it can be the
Oh,
barbecue show, it can be the
yeah,
dump
this
and
is.
stir shows, whatever.
I'm so old. I go back to when Food Network launched. And when they launched, it was great. It was an educational show. David Rosengarten
Right.
did a wonderful show where he showed you how to cook a dish. And even Emeril, and I'm not a huge fan of Emeril, he did the same thing. Most of the shows on the Food Network were how to cook food shows. And now they still have a bunch of them during daytime. But during prime time, you've got all these competitions, and there's some interesting ideas. Some of these chefs have some interesting ideas and concepts and combinations, but you really don't get to learn how to cook a recipe from Beat Bobby Flay or from Iron Chef.
No.
So I would like to see more instructional cooking. I want Alton Brown, and that the Alton Brown show is gone now. I mean, you can get it in replays on YouTube, but Alton now is running competitions. I guess that's what works for them, and it's too bad. I know that they had me in to audition for a show, and they loved it. but they deep sixed it because I'm old and gray, and they wanted somebody young with spiky hair.
Yep. I
Um,
know that deal. I went through that with Fox. So
mhm.
yeah, it's and I didn't have big enough boobs. So, anyway. Meathead Goldwyn from AmazingRibs.com. Go there, get your information. Also, if you're up for it, and I recommend it, join the Pitmasters Club there. There's lots of good stuff there,
Thank
and
you.
there's reviews on different products, everything from grills to oven mitts to thermometers, whatever. And there's a lot of recipes on there too that you can use. So, Meathead, thank you, my friend, as always. I appreciate it.
It's always great hanging with you. We have met face to face on a rare occasion, and those were fun. We need to do it more often.
We should. By the way, how are the Bears doing this year? It's only
Well,
preseason, but how are the Bears?
we're very optimistic. Of course, we are every year.
Yeah.
But the Bears got a new general manager a couple of years ago, and he has proven to be very clever and smart. And he managed to maneuver to get the #1 draft pick, which is a kid called Caleb Williams out of Southern Cal. And he's the new quarterback, and he is showing great promise. I mean, in the second preseason game this week, he threw some really impressive passes, running against the grain, throwing on the back foot, 45 yards, hitting the guy in stride. I mean,
He's
scrambling
good.
for
He's
10-yard
good.
touchdown.
Yeah. Yeah. He is.
And he's also loaded up on a bunch of other positions that were weak, with some other players, and there's still weakness. I think they'll be a playoff team. How far they go, I don't know. But there's unparalleled optimism, more than I've ever seen in Chicago. So, are you a Seahawks fan?
Not really.
Do you follow a pro team?
Oh yeah, I follow I like Kansas City. I do
Oh,
like to
wow.
watch the Bears. I'm kind of a Detroit kind of guy. Just because growing up on Thanksgiving Day, Detroit always played on Thanksgiving, and that
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
that was the first pro game I ever saw was Detroit
Ah,
playing the Browns or something. So, yeah, there's a few of them. I have my own thoughts about the Hawks. It's not that I dislike them. I don't dislike them. It's they could have done better for a number of years, but they didn't. So that's all. I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, good luck in Chicago. I will do that. I will come back. Won't be this fall, but next fall, and I will come and watch a Bears game with you. And we can have a good
that'd be
weekend there.
fun.
But yeah. All right. We got to get out of here. I want to thank Meathead again from AmazingRibs.com. Miss Whippen will be back in a couple of weeks. Until then, go out, have some fun, have a good Labor Day. And remember our motto here: turn it, don't burn it. Take care, everybody.